All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are watching me from. My name is Raymond Kaburi, and this afternoon or this morning, I'm bringing to you this presentation on experiential learning. Yeah, so we are going to look at this in a strategy based analysis mode. So, what is experiential learning? It's learning through doing, reflection, and application. And the emphasis is on active student participation, inclusion of hands-on activities, collaborative, and as well as real-world tasks. So, this is a sample uh, cycle from Kolb, 1974, that who brought about this cycle on the experiential learning, which has broken them down into four major sections. That is the concrete experience, the active reflection, observation, abstract conceptualization, and the active experimentation. Now we want to look at the theoretical basis. So the theoretical basis actually came from Abraham Kolb, which I mentioned earlier, Carl Rogers, as well as John Dewey. All of them contributed significantly to the historical development of Hans the experiential learning theory, and each of them contributed differently. And John Dewey said that learning via social and reflective experiences, and Co-op also brought about the experiential learning, that kind of the cycle which you can see over here. So each of them brought about a contributor or is quota to this experiential learning. Carl Rogers talked about the freedom to learn, and that is that. Key principles. So when it comes to experiential learning, there are things that are very essential, but we can never do it when we talk about experiential learning. And one of them is activity or engagement activity, student engagement. You can never talk about experiential learning without engagement activity. We can also talk about reflection. There's some kind of reflection forms as part of the major components of experiential learning, which we saw when we looked at the Corp's experiential learning cycle. And we can also talk about collaboration among learners. Uh, Learners have to collaborate among each other because it always involves this kind of hands-on activities, and they collaborate to share ideas, to think, to make a brainstorm, and come up with solutions. And we can also talk about the feedback loop. In experiential learning, at the end of the day, students are coming out with some ideas, and they must be giving feedback for them to improve the next time around. So these are some of the major or key principles when we want to talk about experiential learning. Looking at the strengths, experiential learning has a lot of pros. Of course, that's what has cons. And one of them is that it promotes critical thinking and problem solving skills. And unlike the traditional methods, which we know that they are usually meant for to pass exam, because they are usually taught in abstract. Experiential learning brings about a deeper aspect of it, of critical thinking and solving problems. It also deepens understanding and engagement. It strengthens students' relationship because they are always collaborating as well with each other and the teacher. The weakness, which I've also talked about, is that it requires a lot of planning. So there's time consuming, it's time intensive. You also, as a teacher, if you want to use this experiential learning process, you need to have a strong classroom management skill. And it's also difficult sometimes to align with standardized testing. And the testing or assessment outcomes can sometimes also be subjective. So we require patience, and we require a lot of guidance, and to require self-discipline if we want to delve into experiential learning. The conditions of implementation are that you should have clear learning objective. There should be a supportive environment because you need to manage your classroom very well, and the opportunities have to be meaningful. There should be an opportunity for meaningful reflection, and you should set feedback mechanisms in place, like we said. And the teacher should not just be someone who is giving instructions, but should serve as a facilitator when it comes to experiential learning. There has been the involvement of technology and AI in experiential learning, which we all know. I've talked about it in my previous video talking about the assessment models, and this connotes the FETs that we use in physics and mathematics simulations. They are virtual labs as well, which brings about collaborative learning platforms. We also have personal learning parts, and also have digital tools that help us to gather data when we want to do experiments in our virtual labs and so on and so forth. So technology has come to enhance experiential learning in diverse ways. Now, examples in science education are what I've already mentioned, the FET simulations, which gives us an interactive science and math simulation exploration. We have the lifestyle VR labs, which are virtual labs that we use for biology, physics, chemistry experiments in our teaching and learning. We also have the citizen projects and the science project, which helps students to contribute to real world data collection and a lot more, which you cannot mention all of them here. We see that in this video, we have this picture, we have 21 transformative applications which are used in diverse fields, and science education is not an exception to that. Now, research has also proven that there are some best practices in experiential learning, and Stanford has said that design thinking supports it. Experiential learning helps us to design thinking support that supports creativity and system learning. And the Journal of Science Education in 2020 also showed research also shown that there's an increase in motivation, retention, and recall when we involve students in the learning process using the experiential learning. Now, to summarize our video, I wanted to make it really short because, like I said, there was an earlier video to this week, so I don't want to load it so much. Is that there are three main key people. One, it comes to the theory and the historical development of experiential learning, and which are Rogers, John Dewey, and Kolb, and reflection through effective through reflection, application, and student agency. These are all components that come together to help us to achieve our goals when we are applying the experiential learning process. And we can see our summary using the course experiential learning to here. We have talked about technology as to how it has enhanced our engagement, our outcomes, or help us when it comes to the application of the experiential learning. And it has transformed our learning not just into abstract, but active learning process that brings meaningfulness in whatever we do. So this year shows us how the scope summary of the experiential learning cycle works, moving from our concrete experience, reflective observations, abstract conceptualization, and finalizing it with our active experimentation. And it gives us a picture, a conclusive picture as to how experiential learning works. And I'm sure we have got something out of this video. I hope that it helps you in whatever lesson or instruction that you are planning for in the future. Thank you very much for watching. And these are the references that I use to help me design this lesson for you today. Thank you for watching.